Hello and welcome to another Thursday. This is David Devine Broadcasting. Welcome to the show. Sheepdog, what's going on? Cashew, what's going on? Treasure Woman, good to see you. Good to see everybody in chat. Tonight we have an awesome show. We're joined tonight and privileged to have Doug Hajicek here. Now, Doug has had a very successful television career spanning over 35 years. And the first point that I'll touch on is he's the creator and producer for the hit TV series Monster Quest, airing on the History Channel, 4 seasons, 71-hour episodes. So it's very impressive. And we're glad to have Doug here today. Doug, welcome to the show.
David, how are you?
I'm doing very good. It's a privilege to have you here. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, it should be fun.
Should be fun. We had a good
I like
time.
it. By the way, I like your open. It's pretty cool.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you said that. It's at first I think it was a little bit different and odd. I found it in the creator free music, right? And then put it with the video that I had.
Oh, it's cool music. I love it.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it was a little bit different, and people were a little thrown off at first, but I think it's growing on people. So I'm glad it's kind of a French upbeat thing, So
It fits you perfect.
Oh, it does. Well, look at that.
Yeah.
All right, what a glowing recommendation from Doug. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Bushcraft, welcome to the show, Life with Bobby. If you guys have any questions for Doug at any point, just write them in the chat, and I'll get them to him. We'll ask him some questions. And there's a lot to cover here. Just if I just went with Doug's bio. It's so impressive. Doug, is there anywhere you'd like to start with Monster Quest or?
I could care less.
You could care less.
My life has kind of been like a strange dream or a strange nightmare. I'm not sure which.
Dream or a nightmare. Well, there'll be a point. Paradox, great to see you. Thanks for joining us. Will there be a point in your life where you'll sit down and you'll assess it and decide whether it was one of those or both?
Yeah, it's, as I go through life and I look back, I do appreciate and am more grateful for some of the weird opportunities. But I think what I've always done, David, is I'm always getting myself in trouble. By volunteering for things, by challenging myself on things I know nothing about. Like when I got in the TV business, I didn't know anything about it. I volunteered to produce a show. I thought, hey, I've been watching TV for, 20, 30 years. I might as well start making it. I mean, that was my teacher. And so all of a sudden I thought, I want to do a TV show. And so I approached a guy who had been reading his newspaper articles for, since I was a kid. And one day I met him by accident and I said, hey, we should do a TV show. Little did I know it was actually going to happen.
Right.
I was actually going to be in charge of this thing. So literally like the next day we went and met with a guy named Ron Hamburg, who was the head of a CBS affiliate. And he said, sure, let's do it. And all of a sudden I'm like, oh crap.
Wow. Yeah.
This is real. And then I did it, but I worked, I think, harder at it than most producers because I was so scared.
Right.
So I worked really, 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 really hard at it. And it was funny because one of the veteran talents that I worked with that show called the executive producer and said, God, who is this Doug Hajicek guy? He was the best producer I'd ever worked with. It was my first shoot.
Wow.
It was because I was so, I had so many details and so many notes and everything over-arranged properly. And you know what I mean? I worked harder at it, but then I found myself going, this wasn't bad. And I figured whatever I don't know, I'll just hire people.
Right.
And so I had no training or anything. And that led me to just meeting so many cool people, which steered my life right and then left and right and left. And it's been quite a life.
That's awesome.
Oh, by the way, my first TV show is still on the air.
Oh, and that
from
was
the 80s. Yeah, from the 80s.
Sheepdog had the question right there. He wanted to know what show was that.
Oh,
And
it's under a whole bunch of names, and it did become a national show. It was started out as a what they call a regional show. It was in
Mhm.
like 5 markets. So it started out as North Country, the name, and then became Backroads with Ron and Raven, and then Minnesota Bound, and it was called then Call of the Wild. It was for on PBS nationally, but it was still the same show. It was just kind of retitled for these different markets.
Yeah.
But now he retired, the host, Ron Shera, and his daughter has taken over. So Ron was probably about in his 30s, and now it's just hilarious that his daughter's taken over. And I did it for 8 years. So I'm kind of proud of that. I mean, there's been literally, I think they're in their like 1500th episode
Wow.
at this point.
Do they still call you once in a while and say,
Oh, I still talk to Ron. He's still a dear friend of mine. I had Ron on my show on Untold Radio AM. If anybody's curious of that history, they can go to my show, Untold Radio AM, and look up Ron Shera. That was the first
Ron,
guy that kind of opened the door for me.
Ron Shera? Okay.
Ron Shera with an S. Yeah.
All right, we'll have to look that up. I do think I have that. I think I have the radio link in the description. So check out Doug's. That's your new podcast, right?
Yeah. It's been around for about 2 years now. I think God, what are we in? Season 4, maybe even. I don't know. It's gone so quick. I don't even really keep track. We're on episode 165 was last Wednesday.
Okay, and that's the one you were telling me about that you host with your son.
Yes, correct. My son Alex. Yeah, which is just a blast.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Hello,
Who
Indy.
would ever thought? When your kid's born and you're changing their diapers, that someday we're gonna do a podcast together.
Right, right. Well, how does that happen? Are they born with the same interests, or they watch you?
I don't really know. Alex, he always tells me that I inspire him, which
Wow,
is cool to hear. He was this really sweet kid when he was born. He was one of those kids you never, ever, ever had to discipline, not because you didn't like to discipline him, but because he never needed it. He was
wow.
just a good kid he never did the wrong thing. And he's still that way today. And he's just sweet. And yeah, but he's just quiet, almost shy. And I asked him, I said, hey, you want to do this? And he said, sure.
Wow, and he's quiet, but when the mic's on, he could talk.
Yeah, he comes alive and he gets red and he laughs a lot and he's just, I don't know. I think he's just it works out well between us. We get a lot of letters that people enjoy the interaction between us.
That's interesting. What a cool time you get to do with your son.
Yeah, it's really neat. Yeah, I think it's cool. But who would ever think,
Right.
when you're younger and life is interesting.
Now, Life with Bobby says she thinks, or they think they heard of the show. Was it called Minnesota Bound? Was that one of the?
Yeah, it was called Minnesota Bound. It's what it's called now, but I believe it's also on ESPN under another name. You can look, I'm sure there's some episodes up on YouTube, but it's the same exact show I started out with Ron with a black lab next to him named Kyla. And obviously Ron's gone through a lot of dogs by his side and they've always been called Raven.
Oh, really?
So he's on like Raven 30 by now.
What was that
Raven
movie?
30.
Yeah, what was it that? Yeah, there was a TV show like that. Oh, King of Queens, where they just kept replacing the dog and not telling Doug. Yeah,
the thing is though, a show like that was storytelling, and storytelling will never go out of style.
Right.
And it was about stories about people. It was an outdoor show, but it was about maybe some man who made the best fishing rod, or who was studying groundhogs, or making duck houses in his garage. And so it was a neat show, and I met so many cool people through it, which opened my career to move into Animal Planet, because one of the people I interviewed was Dr. Lynn Rogers, who was a bear biologist. And I met Lynn, hit it off with Lynn right away. And I remember he knocked on my trailer door. We pulled up with an RV, and he knocked like 2, 3 in the morning. And it was pouring rain, and we had to go out and then follow bears through the woods in the pitch dark, right?
Right.
Black bears, wild black bears. And we hit it off, and I started doing bear research with him, and we ended up putting a camera system in a bear lodge, and I wanted to record the entire hibernation of a black bear in the winter in the wild. Never been done. Then I wanted to record the first birth of black bear cubs. And then next thing you know, Lynn lost his real interesting story. He lost his permit to tranquilize bears, to radio collar them, right? You have to have a permit. And the Forest Service somehow didn't like what he was doing or didn't like what he did. And they took away his permit. And one day he called me up and he goes, Doug, I have a bear that I really like. And I think this bear is calm. And I think I can get a radio collar on her without tranquilizing her. I said, okay, don't do anything. Go get your camera. Go get a camera, put on a tripod, and do it in front of the camera because I have a great idea. So he says, okay, I'll call you back. So he calls me back. He gets some sweetened condensed milk, pours it in a bowl, puts it out in front of this wild black bear. The black bear's, lapping up this milk. And he takes this big leather. I don't know if you've ever seen these bear radio collars. They're real heavy, real big and thick. And he has to put it on, and he has to put a bolt through and then take a ratchet and ratchet it on. And he's doing this with this bear. He doesn't even know, but he just thought this bear was gentle. So he filmed it. Well, then I got a hold of Animal Planet right away that same day and said, hey, I want to do a documentary on bear research based on trust, not drugs and tranquilizers. And so that's what we ended up doing. It was a smash hit on Animal Planet and opened up my national career then in science and, kind of led to one thing after another.
That's amazing. That is amazing. Yeah. So he comes to you and says, I want to put the
he goes, Doug, do you think I'll get in trouble? Do you think, I said, no, just film it. Film it because then, they can't accuse you of collaring a tranquilized bear.
Right. Mike asks what your scariest moment was on Animal Planet.
Oh, doing that, there was a few moments. I was up on a kind of a mountain in Duluth, if you can call it a mountain. A friend of mine had spotted a chocolate-covered black bear with cubs, and he said, hey, let's go up there. We can get some footage for your doc, because these are really pretty. They're all chocolate. And he said, I walked up to the den, and the mother didn't seem to do anything. So, okay. So we went up there to film. Up there all day. I'm getting great footage of these 2 cubs. I'm right at the mouth of the den. All day long we're there. But we decided we wanted to go to town, warm up, and get some lunch, and then come back, film some more. So we get up there, and the mother's out of the den, which is kind of weird. I think it was early spring, probably in March. And all she did was put her ears down and charge us. And I was tethered with this guy by a battery cable. He was wearing my big battery belt because I was doing the filming. And so, and she didn't make any noise. Normally when a black bear is going to get you, they won't make noise. There won't be any blowing. There won't be any teeth clacking. There won't be any paw slapping. She didn't do any of those. She just charged us. And so we ran down this mountain of jagged rocks, tethered together.
Whoa.
And literally, when you get going, you get the momentum going down a hill.
Right.
And I'm talking, if anybody would have fallen, they would have been dead because these rocks were razor sharp and they were poking up. And we never look back. We just ran down that hill, tethered together to get away from her, not knowing if she was on her heels or not, or how far she followed us down that mountain. But man, she came at us like a predator.
Wow.
So that was one of them.
And were
One.
the cameras rolling while you were doing that?
Of course. Oh, sure. Yeah, yeah, oh,
Yeah,
yeah. That's, aimed at the sky and the thing. Oh, yeah.
yeah.
I had
And
the camera rolling.
it's
But but there was another time where I had to go and I wanted to get a scene in the winter time. I wanted to check on one of the bears that we did have collared. I knew where her den was. And it was in the wintertime, and I was worried, as Lynn Rogers was, that she had been shot. It's a hunter in the fall had shot her and didn't die and was maybe infected and so on because she wandered really far away from her normal area. So I took snowmobile, took a friend of mine, Joe, who was scared to go with me. He said, "Are you sure, bears don't come out of their den in the winter?" I'm like, no, 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 no worries. I'm just going to dig a hole at the den opening. I want to get a shot of her, smell, make sure there's no bad smells in there, from an infection from a wound and blah, blah, blah. And so we get there and we snowshoe in. The snow's up to our neck. And we, every once in a while, my buddy would disappear. The snow was so deep that year. And we'd trip and fall. I was like a clumsy ox in those snowshoes.
yeah.
And we get up to the den, find it, dig it out. Joe's up standing on kind of a high rock that's buried in snow, but there's a little bit of the rock showing. He's up there and he's about maybe 20 feet away from me. And I'm digging and digging and digging. I finally break through and I put a light, shine a light in there. I have infrared. First time anybody had ever used infrared, by the way, on national TV. And so this goes way back, right?
Yeah.
And so I've got an infrared light and I'm filming an infrared. And here she comes right at me out of the den, middle of the wintertime, knocks me over because I'm on snowshoes, knocks me backwards. I fall backwards and she's standing on me.
Oh, man.
Literally standing. I'm pinned in the snow on my back.
Right.
And the snow has almost covered my face. Just my mouth is kind of barely uncovered. And Joe's going, what do you want me to do? I said, just don't run. Because she was just sitting on me. And I don't know how long that lasted, probably 10 minutes. She just sat, looked at Joe, looked down at me, looked at Joe, looked down at me. And I do remember saying something stupid to Joe, like, just remember, Joe, she hasn't eaten in 6 months. And nothing happened. She finally got off me, wandered off into the forest. And I knew she'd probably, come back right after we left. Right. But the key was I got this beautiful shot of this bear brushing past my camera lens, coming out of a den. Nothing like that had ever been filmed before.
Right.
And I used it for like her emerging in the spring, right? Took it out of context.
Yeah.
And actually it was totally different.
Wow.
So, and that, those kind of moments happen. There's a lot more stories about bears, but.
Was that the only time that you had experienced a bear coming out when they're supposed to be hibernating?
Oh God, yes. Yeah. I mean, I was new to all this, I was new, but my goal was to get new information. There was another time that me and Lynn disagreed really bad, and I wanted this shot. So I knew this was going to be this documentary was going to make or break my career. We had Mark Hamill from Star Wars was going to be the narrator, which he did narrate it.
Wow, amazing.
It was, it was one of the highest, but they'd given me a really high budget. So I remember it was the highest budget they had ever provided for an animal documentary.
Wow.
And I didn't want to let anybody down. And so I kept inventing new ways to film bears. And so one of the things I wanted to do, I had a camera in one bear den, but that bear did not give birth. So it was a bust, right? And that was technologically had never been done before, running a live webcam. I did it. It was on discovery.com. And the technology we had to use back then was insane to get that to happen. But anyhow, so with this live webcam, but if a bear isn't fat enough in the fall when they go in their den and they're pregnant, almost every female bear is pregnant when they go in their den. But if they're not fat enough, they won't give birth. They'll just absorb their cub. They'll just absorb into their body again. Or they'll do a stillborn cub. Um, but anyhow, but her sister Blackheart had given birth. That we didn't have a radio collar, but we knew where her den was, and she had cubs, and so I'm thinking, oh God, this is horrible. What am I going to do now? So I decided I'm going to build this thing I called the Cub Probe, 20-foot long articulating rods, so I could fully control a small camera, a micro camera. And I used a underwater AquaView camera for this, but I could pivot it and change the directions of it.
Right.
And Lynn thought it would bother the bear and chase the bear off her cubs, and the cubs would die, and so on. But I'm like, Lynn, it's an inanimate object. Why would a bear be afraid of an inanimate object like a branch or a thing? It just wouldn't. There's no, if you're far enough away and you have this long 25-foot articulating rods with a camera, she shouldn't even look at it. She might sniff it. So we argued about that for 2 days. Very actually quite intense because he's the researcher responsible for the wildlife. He's the doctor, and I'm just this gun-ho filmmaker.
Right.
And I finally won the argument. We did it. It was historical footage. We got these little, 3-inch cubs nursing on the mom's teat, and it had never been filmed before. And the Cub Probe worked excellent. It didn't bother the bear one bit. But so my thought was, it's inanimate. It's not alive. Why would it bother a bear? And it does make sense if you think about it.
Yeah, that's fascinating because the guy you're filming with, the expert, he wasn't too sure that would work.
No.
But there's probably obviously from that moment that's just general practice now. That knowledge that you got from how did you told us the reasoning. You felt like
I was just under pressure to do a lot of new things. Many of these things have never been duplicated. No one's ever done an entire hibernation, filmed the birth of wild black bears, and it took me years to get that finally done, where you had the perfect storm, where you had a den, you knew where the bear was, you knew she was fat enough to give birth, and then you could, and I had to invent a whole really interesting camera system because I had to have a tube and a tube and a tube, because a bear will often get bored in the wintertime and chew at the camera just because it's bored. And bears love plastic for the smell of it. They just like it. So I had to develop a thing with a tube and a tube and a tube with rubber bands. So if it grabbed the camera, it would pull back and then it would retract into the tube.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
To protect it. And then we could do a reset on it real easy. So it was just, stuff like that you have to overcome. And then it was really cool because years later now, a scientific paper just came out on that whole filming of the first birth. And I'm very proud of that, having my first scientific paper published.
I was going to ask you that because, and then we'll get into the camera system that you did with the giant squids and everything.
Oh yeah.
But so part of this filmmaking, also you become an inventor. We're trying to make scenarios happen. Have you done a documentary on the inventions you've made? Wow.
1 second. I swallowed wrong.
Yeah, that happens.
You ever do that? It's horrible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, it goes right down your windpipe.
Yeah, take your time.
I'm okay. It was just a drop, and that's all it takes.
That's all it takes.
Anyhow, I didn't even hear your question. I was focusing on dying, Dave.
Yeah, if you're gonna, definitely that takes precedence over the questions that I have for sure. Yeah,
go ahead and say that again.
If you feel yourself, ever dying on the show tonight, feel free to shut the camera down or take a minute. Yeah, absolutely.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Your life and living takes precedence.
It's funny that when you can't breathe, first thing you do is go into instant survival mode.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, coincidence. I did that this morning. I actually swallowed something weird, and that becomes the most important thing in life.
It's the first time it's ever happened on a podcast, though.
Well, I'm glad it happened here. We do a lot.
Yeah,
here. I'm glad it did.
Yeah,
happen
I'm glad
here.
too. I'm good.
We'll have to talk about this for years to come. Remember
So
that
anyhow,
time Doug almost died? No, I was wondering if you ever did if you have done a documentary or a short film or anything on just the inventions that you've made while out filming, and then the applications and show a little footage of how it started and how it ended. Have you?
well, Monster Quest is kind of a. There's a lot of things that I've invented or tried first in Monster Quest, but they weren't necessarily. In many cases, people didn't know. If it had originated with me. Like there was one that I got credit for. I did, which was a laser measuring lens.
Right.
So you could measure animals on land or underwater without capturing them, which is really a handy tool.
Yeah,
You could do it from
absolutely.
afar. You can do it from any distance. And we measured the world's biggest crocodile that way, the world's biggest alligator. And
Wow.
then we tried it for the squid. On the second time, we tried to get more footage of a giant squid. And the actual laser scared the dang squid away.
Oh,
And
wow.
we didn't anticipate that. So that lens never got used to be used on a giant squid. So, but it has been used on Komodo dragons and alligators and crocodiles and fish and all sorts of animals by biologists.
So on land, it seem to affect or bother the
No,
animals,
no, and animals pretty much just ignore it.
but
So you could,
but
for instance, aim it at a deer and you can get the exact dimensions of that, any part of that deer, because it films the deer and you see the two laser dots and you know exactly the distance between those two dots. Simple concept.
right,
But everything had to be, I had to machine everything with a CNC machine.
right,
And then I had to have holders for the two lasers to make sure there was never any chance of any deviation or, you know, cantering of those lasers. They had to stay really lock solid. And then it had to fit onto a camera. So
interesting. Yeah, I
like
would think.
I just had a really cool invention here. It was last winter and I haven't done anything with it yet, but it's a holograph projecting lens.
Oh, I was reading about that. Yeah, I
And
was
so
reading
you can
about
put
that.
it
Yeah,
on a camera, any camera, I guess. And you can, bolt it almost like a mat box. And now you can project holographs that only the lens can see, but man, do they look real anywhere you want, real time. And it could be a really cool, handy thing for movie making or saving money or having the actors be able to understand more what they're interacting with if they're interacting with an animation.
right. So,
But I haven't done anything with it yet. But that's the kind of stuff I do constantly. And
wow,
I've got
that's
a number of inventions kind of lined up that I haven't done anything with yet, but I will. You wait for the right moment and then you pounce,
yeah.
you
Wow,
know.
yeah. I think that would be interesting. Just a documentary, just on the inventions and the applications. That's cool. There's a couple questions here. What's the bit? Mike says, "What's the biggest croc?" Doug, I'm
I
gonna
don't
say
remember, but I
18
believe it
feet.
was at that time, it was bigger than 22 feet.
Wow.
That's a big, yeah, it's a big animal. I mean, I remember it left a slide. I believe the slide was like, God, it was like 7 feet wide. That's a big animal.
Wow.
It was in India that we filmed that.
India, man. That's
India, yeah,
think about that. Yeah, think about that. That's two basketball courts or two basketball hoops and 2 more feet.
yeah, that's crazy.
That's insane. What
Yeah, I
does
mean, I'm not. I've never been really good at like remembering
yeah,
details because I don't take them as that important. I kind of like to look at the big picture. Go, oh, that's cool. We accomplished that, and we got to use this laser measuring lens, and and that's kind of I'm done. I move on. It's the end of it
right.
for me. Some new
Uh,
challenge that gets me going.
Life with Bobby wants to know how many lakes have you tried that in? And I'm guessing the laser pointer, maybe?
Well, it's been used mainly in the ocean.
Yeah, I was gonna say. After I
Yeah,
read it, I was like, oh, it's squid. I don't know.
yeah, it's been mainly used in the ocean, mainly in the Pacific Ocean.
And Mike Jones says now R2D2 can project to the princess, right? Yeah, that's what he's saying with the holographic.
Yeah.
Yeah, she
Well,
could
the other
make.
thing too, I invented with a buddy of mine. Buddy of mine came to me with an idea. He wanted to shield cell phone radiation, and he wanted this portable thing you could take with you and shield it from radiation, so you could leave your phone on, still get calls, but shield it. And he didn't quite know how to do it. And I thought, God, yeah, okay, so let's do that, but let's incorporate it into a holographic alarm clock. So let's combine your idea, and we'll figure out how to do your idea with something I've been wanting to do. And so we combined it, made a prototype, works beautiful.
Wow.
And I don't know quite what to do with it, but it's a really cool clock. And you slip your phone into it, it charges it. And you don't need glasses to see these beautiful crystal clear holograms day or night. It's really amazing.
Wow. Put me down for one of those. When we get
Yeah. And the thing is, we think we can get them down to like $20 for a pair of them.
Wow.
For 2 nightstands, but it'll shield you from all the radiation. Phones are pretty bad. I mean, they really do. Not only do they put off a lot of EMF, they're very inconsistent. You can buy 2 phones, same, it can both be iPhone 10s or 12s or whatever,
right.
and one can be putting out I would consider almost deadly radiation, and the other one isn't putting out as much.
Wow.
It's very inconsistent. But think about it. We all give our kids iPhones. Everybody's alarm clock now.
Right.
Is
right.
your cell phone.
Right.
And they put out a ton of radiation because they're always, even when they're off, they're making contact with the tower constantly. And then they go from, very low radiation all of a sudden to immense. And now with 5G, it's even worse. And the idea is you can prevent that by putting it in airplane mode, but now you can't get any calls.
Right.
So what our alarm clock does is it bounces all of the radiation away from you, from your body. So all the radiation is going away, and then you can wake up to your favorite, whatever kind of holograph you want to wake up to, whether it's you're in a football and it's a football player saying, get up, it's big game day, or if it's something peaceful like a fire or whatever it is, and it'll put you to sleep too with the same kind of technology.
That's fantastic.
It's really it's one of my coolest products, but
and all the while shielding it from radiation. Wow.
Yes. So there's a benefit. Plus, the reason we can do it so cheap is because our goal is to have you can buy new apps for it all the time, new holograms.
Yeah.
For $1. So you want Christmas holograms for your kids that Santa can tell them a story at night, a different story for 10 nights in a row. It's going to cost you $1. So it would fuel, bringing income constantly. So that's our idea in a nutshell. If somebody wants to steal it.
Wow, that's fantastic.
But I have a working prototype, so I'm way ahead of you.
So you have that patent or patent pending.
I do have a patent pending on some of the technology that I've utilized. And that started with a toy I invented for Tommy Toys. And it's a real interesting combination of technologies, and that's what I'm good at, combining technologies.
Right.
I don't really think I ever invent anything. I combine technologies.
Wow. That's incredible. Yeah, we have a couple people that want to purchase one of those. If you can get it out by Christmas, Doug, that would be great.
Oh, yeah. All I need is the app. I just got a quote on the app, about $50,000 for my app. That's part of it. It's like, oh, go on. Okay, well, I'm doing a film right now, and I need money for that. And so it's just one of those things, right? And I just bought a giant 110-ton plastic injection press so I can inject and make these bodies for these alarm clocks.
Yeah.
So I have that now.
So you're gonna make those in house. You're gonna invent them and then make.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. But it's the app development that could be. So if anybody's a great app developer, let me know.
Yeah, if we have app developers out there listening now or in the
There you
future,
go. There
get
you
a hold
go.
of Doug. Doug's info is in the description. So
But
there you go.
I love inventing things. I mean, I really do. It's almost daily for me, literally. I get
Wow.
so used to it and I freed my mind up so much. I think it's almost one a day.
Wow. That's what I'm saying. We need to have at some point a documentary of all these inventions and their use in the field. I think that's fascinating.
Well, none of them are necessarily real complicated, but they go in a pipe. There's a manufacturing company. Well, there's a number of them I deal with, but there's a manufacturing company I deal with. It goes in their pipe, and so many of my inventions are actually in the market. It's scary.
Wow.
A lot of them I don't patent because I don't care. Patents, all a patent does is give you the kind of a little edge to sue somebody, but you still
Right.
got to finance that lawsuit.
Yeah.
And then you still have to figure out a way to collect the money.
Right.
Because you
Right.
can sue somebody, they can just declare bankruptcy and you're not collecting anything. And you just spent $100,000 or $1 million suing them. Oh, big deal.
Yeah, that's a tricky thing with all that inventing.
So,
Oh, yeah, right. If so, your best bet is if a big corporation came along,
so
right?
some of the holographic stuff is really the first stuff I've ever patented. Because you're better off and better protected if you just come out with it first, saturate the market, be the original, and not worry about it. Do something. You have a trade secret.
Right.
I developed a polymer back in the actually in the 70s, and I had an idea for a new polymer, a new type of rubber, and how to manufacture it. And went to work on it. About 8 years later, I developed it and got it all figured out. And back, um, the manufacturing process took longer to dial in, so you could control the whole process. And to this day, I still make a lot of money on it. And that was back in the 70s because it cannot be reversed engineered, because during the manufacturing, there's a chemical change with all the chemicals.
Okay.
So it was a perfect idea.
Wow.
And I did that when I was quite young. That's a long story, but it allowed me to I suppose I could have retired when I was 18.
Wow. Wow. So it just opened and that afforded you the free time to kind of float
Yeah,
around.
right.
Yeah.
That's exactly. We were talking about the TV and the Bigfoot stuff, and it's because of it. Literally, probably because of that first invention, gave me an income so I could start doing what I wanted to do.
So that's where it kind of all started with that
Yeah.
polymer.
That polymer, yep. Still unique. Nobody still has duplicated it, and it still has vast applications. It's used in medical things. As an example, it's used as in a traction machine, in an HMO improved traction machine, where it grabs the back of the skull and allows the person to lay down and go into traction and using your own body weight.
Wow.
And there's
Incredible.
Probably, I'm sure up to 500,000 of those units have been sold, but they use my polymer.
Wow. Good.
This is one example.
Wow, great for you. Look at that. Mike's this great attitude to have. And I think that was about patenting your new stuff. But yeah. Now, what was, maybe you mentioned it, but what was the application of that polymer? What made you think of that?
Oh, well, that's a long story. If you want to get into it, I'm happy to get into it.
I mean,
it started with the death of my uncle.
Oh, okay.
Okay, it's a weird story.
I love weird stories.
Okay, well, it's a weird one. I don't know. I doubt I've ever told this one, but
oh well, hey.
Okay, so I was literally at my uncle's funeral, and I saw a seal on the edge of the casket.
Okay.
Okay, this is what started it all. And like the dork I am, I wanted to touch it. It looked really interesting to me, and I wanted to touch that seal. I wasn't worried about my uncle. I did, but I love my uncle. All that stuff's great. But I understand. My brain shifted to
For some reason, I understand completely what you're talking.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. And so I was probably 15, 16 years old.
Yeah.
And so I touched that seal, and it was unlike anything I'd ever touched in my life. Because I was asking my father, I was really unimpressed with the weather strip on cars way back, right?
Mm-hmm.
They were hard, or they were nasty looking, or they were just didn't seal good. And there's a lot of wind whistles. And
Right.
cars, even in the 70s, they weren't good. Or they were made of latex.
Yeah, like
Actual,
the molding around the
yeah, round
windows and
doors and
stuff.
stuff.
Yeah,
Or
and
they
they're
were
always
made of latex that broke
flying off.
down
Yeah.
and rotted right away. And within a
Right.
few years, it was rotten because it
Yeah.
was organic.
Yeah.
Latex gets eaten away by bacteria really quick.
Yeah.
So I'm like, there's got to be a better way, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I see this green seal and touch it. So I find the company that made it.
Oh, wow.
And I call them. I'm 15 years old. And I call the gasket company. I swear to God.
It's called the Casket Gasket.
It was called the Casket Company.
Of course it was.
And I said, you got something really unique here. I said, could we make this in black? And then could I get 1 million feet of this in different profiles?
Wow.
Different cross sections? And he goes, yeah, sure. Yeah. So, okay. So then I started this great enterprise where I'm selling all these different automotive remember now it's extruded. It's still not my invention. This is kind of doing a combination of technologies.
Yeah.
But I now set up distributors all over the U.S. buying this stuff, automotive distributors, and they can't get it quick enough for me. So I'm this 15-year-old kid. I'm making, back in those days in the 70s, I was clearing about 10 grand a week net profit.
Wow.
I could keep it at 15 because of this. I was selling it literally all over the world in big bulk. You know, it's coming in, taking the shipping labels on, slapping another shipping label on, and these big, 1,000-foot reels would go out, stacks all over. Okay.
Unreal. And those were all coming from the Casket.
Yes, sir.
Company? Yeah. All right. Okay. Wow.
So then I started getting requests for the transition pieces. Like, how do you basically corner pieces that might get wider and then, narrow down, or end caps for hard tops where they were the end glob, because the only person who was doing that was General Motors, and they were doing it in latex. So I thought if I could invent something soft, easier to mold than latex, and that would last for 30, 40 years, then I could then retire.
Yeah.
And that's what I set out to do, a whole new manufacturing process, a whole new everything. And so that's what I did. And then I finally had the chemical reaction I wanted and everything. And I work with, chemists. I lied through my teeth when I was a kid. I'd call chemists up and lie about, me being some chemist guy at a big factory. And they would send me these free chemicals.
Wow.
And I would just experiment with them in my kitchen.
This is incredible.
And story. But one day I had the reaction I wanted. It almost took my head off. And I thought, okay, now I just got to back engineer it. And so, or back control it.
But now you're like 15, you're 15, 16.
I'm probably 16 at this point, 17. And I've bought into my own house. I have a nice house, live in a suburban neighborhood. I have a new boat, I have a new sport car.
Yeah.
I've got a Corvette and all this stuff. And I'm 16 years old. And I'm sure my neighbors thought it was some drug dealer or something.
Yeah. Wow. 16 in your in your own. I was going to ask you.
Yeah.
Because I was wondering, were you almost blowing up your parents' house? I was wondering what were they saying at the time?
That was all cool. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't remember. My dad was happy because he had financed some of my research, and he was making money too.
Yeah, right.
He was making more money than he had ever made in his life.
Yeah, right.
And so he was just happy. He was really super happy. But anyhow, make a long story short, I figured out how to do this. And to this day, it still, pays me quite a bit of money.
That's incredible.
So it allowed me to do what I really wanted to do. It was not play with chemicals and do things like that, but it was to go be a filmmaker and a wildlife researcher. I grew up watching Jacques Cousteau and,
Yeah.
just in awe of, that's what I want to do,
Mm-hmm.
of wildlife. When I was a kid, I was just so enamored with wildlife. To the point, I don't think I ever got so excited if there was a lion on TV, on our crappy black and white TV, or went to a circus, or just got to go to a farm, or anything to be around wildlife. It just made me go nuts. I just felt this immense euphoria and happiness. It was crazy.
Right. Yeah. I was going to ask you that earlier. What got you into that first TV? Your interest was in animals. You knew that you wanted.
And nobody knows why we're born a certain way, right? You don't know why we all like certain things. I personally believe that we're all kind of reincarnated and continue to learn in our lives and do things. It's kind of my, I just don't think that how can a baby be born and just love a certain thing, something you haven't even been exposed to?
Right.
I've just always felt there's got to be more to this just being born. I've always felt like, no, you're kind of born with a whole lot of loves and things you like and don't like, things you're interested in and not in. I had no interest in music, for instance, none. I like listening to it, but I had no desire to learn any instruments through my life.
Right.
I don't know. So it's just kind of those kinds of deals. But then, and then those things change too, as you grow, and all of a sudden maybe you will develop a new interest, but it happens naturally. So, and I get to do my dream job, which was just be involved in wildlife.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. That you get afforded that opportunity through your invention early on in life. That's amazing. That really is amazing. Thank you for telling that story. If you haven't told us,
sure, it's actually kind of embarrassing. I don't really even like people to know that story, to be honest.
Well, it was interesting and very awesome. I think that Chad agrees. People are, what a great story. Mike Jones says. Life with Bobby says it would be cool to meet you in person and hear all those cool things. Always learning something. Yeah.
Most people think that a person who becomes a successful filmmaker graduated high school, went to a little college, went to film school, and then work their way up. I didn't do any of that. I was just a kid. I dropped out of school at a very young age. I had truant officers looking for me because I was so bored in school.
Yeah.
And my parents didn't care because they trusted me. They always trusted me. I never got in trouble. They always just knew I was doing the right thing. They're very supportive. If I said, at 12 years old, hey, I'm going to hop a train, I'm going to Montana, they'd say, yeah, got fun.
Wow.
We did a lot. I did a lot of crazy stuff, and they always just real trusting that way.
Were your parents, did they have an aptitude for inventing too, or interest in filmmaking or entertainment or storytelling at any point that you maybe rubbed off on you? Or
my father was brilliant, very charismatic, very intense, nice. Like if I asked him a question, he would really make sure I understood the answer.
See, yeah, that's important.
And he would do things like he'd say, hey, let's go sit on the step and watch the world go by. And he would just, I could ask him questions and ask him. And I don't know, he was very peaceful, and he had a childhood of many adventures, and he was an artist too. He painted it was a beautiful portrait painter. And it's kind of a free state. Everybody loved my dad. It was, I grew up watching people just constantly coming over to just visit with my dad, and me sitting in those conversations and listening and learning, because most of it was most of his friends were pretty intellectual, and I would just sit there. And we would also do a thing every Sunday night. My two older brothers would come over, and my whole family would get. I came from a pretty big family, and we would all sit around a table and discuss the world. That's
Wow.
all we would do every Sunday. Instead of having, some families get together and have a big dinner, we didn't do that. We would drink coffee or whatever, whatever your age appropriate beverage, but we would just talk about intellectual things.
Yeah.
And that's how I grew up. And
Wow.
my two brothers were brilliant. Johnny was the black sheep, and he was brilliant. And James was a member of even Mensa, invented many, many things. I think he had 1,000 patents when he died.
Wow.
And he was brilliant, but he maybe wasn't so somebody you'd maybe want to get life advice from.
Right.
Where
Yeah.
brother Johnny was really brilliant, but he did it informally, more like I did. Learned you could ask him anything, he could answer it,
Incredible.
So that's
Yeah.
kind of the influence I guess I had. My mom was just also very, very brilliant, very talented, but she was just loving. She was just so supportive, never judging. They just kind of gave me my freedom. For instance, in the summer, I never slept in the house ever.
Wow.
I lived outside. That's what I loved. I loved to sleep under the stars. And they didn't, I never got in trouble, and so they didn't care.
What
I'd
you
be
were
gone
doing.
for weeks at a time when I was 9, 10 years old, and they never questioned it, never bothered.
Incredible. Yeah. I'm glad I asked that. I had a feeling that there was something like that as far as your background. And Mike Jones says, sounds like your parents were beyond cool.
Oh, they were amazing. Yeah, and they're both deceased, and I miss them greatly. My
Yeah.
dad, no doubt, was my best friend, and my mom was also just this amazing friend to me. She was just, and my mom was psychic. If you did do anything wrong, she knew.
She knew it.
She knew
Wow.
it. Oh yeah, she was psychic. Yeah. Oh, something terrible, but she was just. Now they were both wonderful parents. I was blessed, and the fact, I think kids are so protected nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
And it's they're not given enough maybe morality and love, and then overprotected. Bad combination, I think.
Right. Yeah. I mean, well, you proved what supportive people, and then there's a million things I want to get back to in that story real quick, but it's amazing when you allow a child's mind to kind of work and absorb and are encouraged. It's amazing. Uh, your proof of what the outcome of that could be.
Well,
As a
yeah,
as a
I don't think about it though. I just do it. I don't think about anything. I'm very humble. I still run scared on everything I do, every project I take on. I don't care how simple it is, whatever. I run scared, meaning I try harder to do it because I'm not cocky. I don't think, oh, Mr. I never go at anything with confidence ever, but I go at it with, I'm going to finish this.
Wow. Yeah.
I'm going to get it done.
Wow. Incredible. That's the one thing I wanted to go back to. What was it your dad said? Your dad said, let's go sit down and
Watch the world go by.
watch the world go by.
Yeah. And we did
Wow.
that many, many, many nights. Whether it was looking at the stars, just listening to the sound, listening to an animal, whatever. And it was just magical. I mean, my dad was one of those people that, he was very busy too. He had a lot, he worked, every Saturday even. But if you asked him a question, if he was working on the car and you walked up and said, hey, what do those spark plugs do? He would draw you sketches. He would give you more intense time to where, like, he was like really amazed you would ask a cool question like that. So
Yeah.
he really made you feel good, and he would just spend tons of time until you were like a spark plug expert. Like,
Yeah.
even more
Right.
than anybody.
That's incredible. Wow.
Yep.
That sounds like awesome person.
And
Yeah,
he
that's
was an
incredible.
amazing artist, so he would always draw. If you asked him a question about anything, he would draw and show you illustrations of, like, Da Vinci like drawings of everything.
Wow.
Yeah, he was a pretty cool guy.
Fortunate. That's great. Hello, Bud Files and Sean. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. very amazing stories here tonight, Doug. I really appreciate you sharing these with us. I do want to get into, I mean, what a successful career. There was one couple things I wanted to ask you about the real King Kong film
Yeah.
on the History Channel. Can you
Yeah,
tell
it's
us
a
just
crazy story, actually. So I had this idea. When I had, I was into Bigfoot. Obviously, we can talk about that now or some other time in the future.
yeah,
But I wanted answers. I really just, how can a mystery like that be ignored? A creature seen by so many people, fueled. It's not going away. When a mystery is not going away, look, I don't know anybody who's chasing unicorns. It's
right,
not fueled by anything.
right,
Some
right.
folklore, yeah, and all that, and maybe something like that did exist at one point, but it's not fueled every day. And so, even as a kid, there'd be an article about some weird three-toed tracks or big tracks found, and my dad would always, he'd read me Charles Fort for bedtime stories, and I
Yeah,
was always interested in those kinds of things. But it was one of those things. I thought, well, I want to do a story on Giganto because I want to age. I want to get a hold of those teeth because no one had ever aged them with carbon dating.
wow, okay.
And they had not only had they never been carbon dated, which I thought was odd. They had never been. No one had ever looked for DNA in the tooth. So I'm thinking, well, how can I get my hands on these rare Giganto teeth? Which I did end up doing.
Yeah, you've proved with the polymer thing what a pro you are at
I got
accomplishing
it
what
done,
yeah,
and
you get
so
it done.
I was pitching this doc called Giganto.
Yeah,
My agent was helping. It was batting zero. Nobody was interested in it. No networks, no cable networks. And I had already done Legend Meet Science for Discovery, Sasquatch Legend Meet Science for Discovery, and I'd already done a series on Bigfoot. The world's first TV series on Bigfoot was Mysterious Encounters. And that was on a show or on a network nobody ever saw, on the Outdoor Life Network. But Matt
okay.
Moneymaker was in it with me. We had the backpacks. We had tons of technology, but no one saw it. And there are episodes up on YouTube. Somebody pirated and put them up on YouTube.
So just
So
because it was a lesser known
yeah,
cable
it was a
network?
network that nobody knew about.
Yeah,
It was a Canadian network.
gotcha.
Yeah, it aired on cable networks, but nobody ever watched Outdoor Life Network.
Yeah,
So it didn't get any traction, but it was the number one show on their network. And then they decided to get into bull riding, and that's now called Versus. And they're the rodeo network, man. But anyhow,
right.
so I kept pitching Giganto, went nowhere. One day I'm sitting, I'm watching TV, and the commercial that Peter Jackson had produced at his
Oh
new King
wow.
Kong movie was coming out.
Yeah.
And it hit me like a ton of bricks. Giganto, the real King Kong. Next morning, I called my agent. I go, change the title. I was just kidding. I'll get you a new artwork. Giganto, the real King Kong. He sold the show the next day
Yeah. Yeah.
to NBC, actually, for prime time
Wow.
on a broadcast. It was really exciting. I'm like, oh my God, it's going to be great. So then it had to get approval from all their European divisions and blah, 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 blah. It got everybody approved it. Comes back and the president vetoed it.
Wow.
And the premise of the show was people in China looking for more fossils, people here looking for living relics, maybe of Giganto, aging Giganto. It was kind of this three-pronged show I wanted to do. So anyhow, bottom line is I did it. I did get the teeth, did do all that stuff. We did all, it's one of my best docs I've ever done. It's called Giganto, the Real King Kong. And it ran on the History Channel, set records on their network.
Wow.
They'd never had ratings that high, viewers that many. They called me up the next day after they got their overnight ratings, go, can you do more of these?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I said, yeah, of course. And that became Monster Quest.
Wow. Okay. Oh, so that's okay. That turned into Monster
Yeah,
Quest.
that's how
Okay.
Monster Quest was born.
Wow. And what a successful run that has
Yeah, yeah.
had. Um, Incredible. Is there one favorite? Do you have a favorite episode of Monster Quest?
Not really. I'll actually even get, I haven't lied on them, look at them, but every once in a while I will watch and I get sucked into them.
Yeah.
I think I did a good job in the storytelling, in the science. If you really look hard, there's a lot of science in each episode. Tried to do things that no one had ever done, use equipment no one had ever used. Go after things not because I wanted to make money, because I wanted answers.
Yeah.
Everything was driven from that wildlife researcher in me versus, oh, I'm just a producer who wants to make money. Let's just do a Bigfoot show. It's really a popular topic.
Mm-hmm.
That was never my approach. And that's why to this day it still holds up and people still love it.
Yeah, I think obviously that's why it wears well, and that's why it was attractive, is because you were coming from a place where you weren't necessarily trying to gain an audience. You were trying to put out the art that you wanted to put out.
I
And
wanted
you
to
didn't.
get answers. Yeah. And I wanted it just to tell a good story. I wanted to get information to people.
Yeah.
And
you didn't have to compromise it because you were afforded to kind of to do it the way you want it to.
Yeah. And I had the budget. They were very generous with my budget.
Wow.
I'm sure they rolled their eyes many times. I know damn well they rolled their eyes when I said I'm going to get footage of a giant squid, the first footage. I know they rolled their eyes because people told me after the fact that I was just like a bullshitter.
Yeah.
But once again, I ran scared. I worked hard, kind of come up with a new concept on how to do it. Built everything myself. And then, I always say, if you want to get footage of something new, including a Bigfoot, it's going to be a multi-step process. It's not going to be strapping a game camera on a tree. That's a one-step process.
Yeah.
It's going to be many steps. The more steps, I think the better chance you are at filming or accomplishing your goal. And so with the giant squid,
that's
step
incredible.
one was first for me to convince myself there were squid that were huge in the Sea of Cortez. I did that years before. That was step one. And I did that by taking, this is a secret now, I'm devoting on your show.
All right, here we go. You're doing a lot of firsts here.
And I took a long piece of mylar,
okay.
regular like wrapping paper.
Right.
And I cut a big bass, like a twister tail.
Okay.
That would then, as it goes through the water, because it's got that curve, if you know what a bass rubber jig tail is.
Yeah. Okay.
I built a giant 6-foot jig tail.
Wow.
Then I built another one, and I've smuggled them down to Mexico along with a camera with a long 1,000-foot reel. It was a well camera for well inspection. Smuggle all this down on somebody's dime. Because I was on another expedition, with another accomplishment. That wasn't part of the accomplishment, but it was to do with squid. But I knew, and no one believed me. Even the people that were on the boat with me didn't believe me, and I just didn't want to even argue with them. I just did what I did, and guess what happened? I not hooked into one. I had one attack my camera.
Wow.
And not only did it rip a 600-pound tensile coaxial, it ripped a, I can't think, a Kevlar cable that would take at minimum 600 pounds to tear it. Because I tested it after I got back.
Wow.
How deep thing was?
How deep was it?
It was pretty deep. It was probably about 700 feet.
700 feet.
So I made this I basically just tied these mylar stringers on a camera with a weight, put it down when no one was around. They were going real slow into an area. They were doing some what do you call it? Graphing, looking for a certain kind of fish.
Yeah.
So I'm at the other end, far away from their depth finder, and I've just let line out. And then bam. But the nice thing was I could confirm it was a big squid because I filmed it.
That's
the
incredible.
attack. So all I got was a giant sucker and a big hook. That's all I got. That's all I came on film. And I thought, okay, I know what I'm going to be doing someday when I can get my own money together and do my own expedition. And that's what happened.
That's incredible.
So then I built, so then instead of Mylar, I used rubber, made a mold, calendared rubber, made this huge, basically thing to catch. The idea was to catch a big squid, to take a payload down to turn him into a Trojan squid. Because why would a squid be afraid of a squid? Remember my cub probe experience.
Right. Yeah,
why would a bear be afraid of something inanimate?
Right.
Why would a squid be afraid of another squid?
Right.
Same kind of logic, I guess.
Incredible.
Dougie logic.
Incredible.
So, and that's what we did. Put a camera with nuts and bolts. I swear to God, pins, cotter pins, and everything on this other big squid. Let him go down because I had a theory. And it does, because you have to test theories numerous times to know if they're really true. Yeah. But I'm still sticking to it. And that is the real big, giant squid over 50 feet long have gotten out of their niche. They have never bred. They're completely out of their niche. They have become cannibals. They let all the other squid, let's say up to even 20 feet long, go up and down the water column, and they catch food at the surface and come down, and these monsters just devoured them. That was my theory.
Yeah.
It's an unproven theory. I have never had a scientist even acknowledge my theory or ever call me or ever say, hey, let's talk about this. Just completely ignored. Even the Smithsonian, who had been trying and spent, God knows, millions trying to do what I did in one day.
What do you attribute them to not?
I don't know.
I mean,
stubbornness. I don't know. You would think that the theory I have would be tested by somebody, and I tested my own theory and it worked.
That would, you'd think, yeah, be a pretty significant.
But I have the same theory with many other animals, including fish in the loch. I think there are certain fish that just get out of their niche and grow to gigantic proportions, can live for hundreds of years even. Mm-hmm. They don't breed. They stay deep and they become cannibals. That's all they'll do is just eat their own kind. And they're never going to attack a lure. They're never going to do any of that stuff. And there are seen occasionally, if you really study things like up in the Arctic, there are people that see and have hooked into these monsters that will pull a big boat around for 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 hours. The Point Lake monster, I did a show on that because it was a boat that got hooked into it was a lake trout, no doubt. There's nothing in Point Lake except lake trout and some northern pike, but they hooked into a fish and it pulled them around, I think, for 12 hours. It's those kind of stories are widely available on the internet. I saw with my own eyes a trout that was at least 6 foot long, if not longer.
Wow. Yeah.
It looked like a man swimming in the water. And I knew that fish had gotten out of its niche because I used to read the Al Linder books from the Infisherman. And Al had mentioned niche. He had a theory. And so it really wasn't even my theory, but all I did was apply something I'd heard or read from Al Linder, bless his heart, and applied it to other animal species.
Right.
And did something with it as a research tool. But I think it might have been Al Linder that actually came up with that whole concept of fish getting out of their niche if you want to catch big fish.
That's an incredible thought. And
but that could explain like the Loch Ness monster.
Yeah, I was going to ask. Yeah, I just booked somebody about the Loch Ness monster.
Oh, there you go. Well, talk about the something that got out of its niche. Because I was going to ask you, because squid don't live that long, David. If a squid gets out of its niche, it doesn't breed. It may not die.
Yeah,
and then it stays in the cold, dark, sterile waters.
Wow,
there's no bacteria.
That's incredible, man. That is so incredible that
there's nothing to kill it.
You're talking about these anomalies and these giants and these monsters, and people never really have offered uh, as rational a thought as you just told us right here,
Yeah,
that they
no,
could
no, it's
they
it's. But I'm always think some scientist or group of researchers are going to clam onto one of these theories and do something with it, and they never do.
right.
Although I do know a competing network did try to duplicate what I did
Of course, yeah, there was.
twice, and
Yeah.
they failed both times.
But we
I
know
tried
who.
to duplicate what I did and failed.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So now it's been how many years since, and my squid was confirmed by scientists, and they even produced a new 2-hour doc history did. It's called Predators of the Deep. It's available in the History Vault, and it confirms that what we filmed was the world's first Architeuthis ducks, a giant squid, in the wild, period. First one ever filmed.
Incredible.
So there you go. But now I will really want to get a Sasquatch footage.
Yeah,
And that's
right.
been a journey. So, and that's we're doing the multi steps. In fact, I was on the phone today with another tech talking all sorts of new things. And
Is that what you were working on today?
it's yes.
Yeah, okay. We were talking backstage. Now, I do have a few more comments here, and I do want to make sure everybody knows where to find you, and so
Sure.
we'll get those links out here. Um, but again, this has been an incredible show. You almost passed away. You've told us a bunch of new stories and things you haven't said before. This has been really incredible. Thank you, Doug.
Yeah,
Uh,
I did, didn't I? I choked
yeah,
pretty hard.
it's been awesome. I mean, it really. Mike Jones says time to try again. I bet that's
Remind me not to eat steak on your show.
oh, not to eat steak.
Yeah, not to eat any steak on your show. I might
How?
need someone to do the Heimlich maneuver
Yeah,
on me.
right. Without somebody there to help you, but behind you.
Exactly.
Yeah. What emerging tech does Doug think he is the most scary / helpful? And
Oh,
that,
oh,
but
yeah, okay.
Mike also says that with Elon's money and with Doug in a laboratory, mad scientist stuff.
Why
So
couldn't
he's
I? Yeah, I'd love to meet Elon, but I'd never get past his handlers. They'd never talk to me. Elon would, and that's sad because I really think, actually, I think I could bring some new things to him. I really do.
yeah. I mean, I would think that you've offered enough on the show tonight to make him interested. That
But
you
I
you
just
know
kind of don't think, Elon's ever knocking on my door.
yeah. But hey,
He's
listen,
pretty
folks.
brilliant. He's
Yeah,
pretty
he's
brilliant.
brilliant, but folks, Doug doesn't need Elon. I don't think Doug needs. Doug's doing just fine. Doug's doing just fine. But if Elon is listening, yeah, here's
But
Doug.
did you? But is there a question you want me to answer? What I think the scariest technology
Yeah,
is?
yeah, that was it. Yeah, what was it? The
Okay, I
scariest / helpful.
absolutely am scared to death, yes, of AI, and it's been scaring me up. And here's why. I have known about AI far longer than most people. My brother was working on AI for the government back in the 60s. James was.
Wow.
He was working for UNIVAC and all these things. He was I believe James was one of the AI pioneers. He's the one that created the AI plant for the Saturn car. It's all completely automated. My brother did all that. Um, uh, and we've been discussing AI. I have, and the dangers of it for how many years now? 50 years, over 50 years. I've been discussing the dangers of AI.
Wow.
So I think it's absolutely horrid the way they released it. Because it's great. We can all make little fun things and animate things, and we can all do that. But you remember, there's bad people out there that really are
Right.
bad,
Yeah. Yeah.
and they have access to the same damn technology.
Uh,
Um, and I just don't think the world was ready for it yet because we have so much war, we have so many enemies, and so much can be done. And we've also have no backups in this country for anything. We have no grid backups. Everything, we have no analog backups to anything. If the internet just goes down, they're talking death and destruction within 3 weeks, just the internet being gone. And I tend to believe that because they've lost the ability to even ring anything up anymore
Right.
without the internet. It's
Yeah.
scary.
Yeah.
How are you going to buy gas? How are you going to buy food? Well, then what's going to happen? People are starving.
Mm-hmm.
And when bad people are starving is where you're going to really have fun,
Mm-hmm.
if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Good
Yeah.
people starving will help other people and they'll do things. But bad people starving will just want to take away from the good people who are starving.
Yeah. I mean, can you imagine? I mean, they estimate how long people would start attacking and acting like animals.
I've heard from 3 days to weeks. Yeah.
Yeah.
What
I've
have you heard, David?
I've witnessed people without access to their money, like in a day, just ripping apart, box
Yeah.
stores.
Yep.
Just like devastating in a day's time.
Right. No, it's
Out of panic. Uh, yeah, AI is. Yeah, I mean the images do come out dark, right in the wrong hands. You could rewrite history.
there's just so many bad things that can happen. Immediately, I think it's going to be in cyber attacks,
Yeah.
grid attacks, taking away, power, shutting down power plants, shutting down nuclear plants, which could be deadly, guiding missiles into places we don't want them guided.
Right.
There's a
Yeah.
lot of, I don't even want to actually talk about some of the stuff I know and have thought about.
Right. Right. Well, yeah, and it just becomes where people in professional businesses used to write their own letters home explaining something good or bad or to employee. Now AI writes it for them and they just sign their name at the bottom.
Wow.
If they can remember how to write in cursive.
Yeah. Well, you got to remember, and I'm not exaggerating. We have been talking about artificial intelligence since I was a child.
That's crazy. Yeah.
Because my brother was so involved in it.
That's wild.
And then, doing big projects like, animating or automating. I said animating, automating the Saturn plant. And that's just one example of things he did. But, there was even his wife didn't know the kind of stuff he was doing. He was a computer pioneer. He's credited with making the world's first calculator, LED calculator, and things like that. He was an amazing guy.
Incredible, man.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm so glad you shared those stories about your family with us tonight, and your brother here with his inventions. And we didn't know he was at the start of AI like that. Just incredible stuff. Just really incredible stuff.
So I worry. I'm really worried now that I was just praying every time. I was like, no, don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it.
Yeah. Mike Jones says, I asked AI what was the 20 most dangerous emerging tech, and AI answered AI, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. AI is, yeah.
And I don't know what this means. Mike says, Elon personally banned me off X for over promoting this show. Oh, for over promoting. Okay. So Mike was promoting this show tonight. A lot, I guess, to his friends. To Mike's. All right. But anyway, that's funny, Mike. All right. And hello, Unspecified V. Good to see you. Doug, this has been awesome. I know people can find you at Untold Radio Network. Also, below there are links to your Amazon books that are available.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I started a publishing company, and I didn't start it just once again to make money. I came up because the publishing industry hasn't changed in hundreds and hundreds of years, right?
Right.
So I'm like, I'm going to change it. There's a way to change it. I'm going to do it. Real simple. People can listen and see videos in our print books. Enough said. So, like, if you buy the Freeman Files book, you can watch up to 100 videos in that book and listen to Paul's audio recordings in the print book.
In the
print book. Yeah, in the print. We call it immersive book technology. No one's ever done it. We're the first. All of our books don't necessarily have it, but it allows us for certain books. Like we're working on a new book called Unknown Sounds with David Ellis to publish. but it's the first time in a book, in a print book, it can have all the information, including the sounds in the book.
That's incredible. I've seen that only in some promotion material for a company once where they had a slate, like you opened a,
Right. It's been used for advertising, but never for
yeah.
regular publishing.
So what he's talking about is, yeah, you might turn to page what, 3, and there's a video, a flat page there with the right. Somehow the video, the technology
Well,
plays
people
the,
have to check out our website.
yeah, yeah.
We're pretty stacked up with a lot of books in our pipeline now, from a lot of cool authors. We've got a lot of really cool new books coming out, of course, every year, and they keep coming out the pipe. But I wanted to, if I was going to get into the publishing industry, I wanted to do it differently. So combine different technologies.
That's
So it's
that.
Hanger One Publishing, and Hanger is with a GAR.
Right. And again, those links are in the description. And
Oh,
if there's
thank
any
you.
other description or any other links that I haven't left, I know I have your YouTube channel, Untold, and I know I have an Amazon link and the publishing link. I know I have that.
Yeah.
And if there's any after the show, I'll go back and try to add some more of Doug's links because Doug, listen, incredible story. Uh, we're going to wrap
Well,
up
we got to do
here.
this again, David.
We
We'll just do
have
it
to,
again.
absolutely, because I didn't, a lot of times I don't get to many questions with guests because I love to just, I don't know, just kind of riff because
Yeah.
we have
I
so
like to
many,
just do that too. Yeah.
we have so many interesting people. But tonight with you, I really didn't, I didn't even go, I didn't go get off my screen off your bio. I didn't even take it off the bio. And I do have plenty of questions, but I
No,
want to go, I want to go back and watch this stream because you said so many interesting things. It shared at least a couple of things that were first on the show, and I really appreciate it, man. And we do, when you say we do have to do this again, I really, I'm glad you said that because I think the same too. Whenever you're available again, because I have so many more questions now. I
yeah,
mean,
no. Anytime, David. It would be fun.
just incredible stuff. Everybody, check out Doug's links in the description below. Share this video out because it was amazing. This was an amazing interview, Doug. Thank you very much. I'm going to play the outro video. Is there anything you'd like to say in conclusion?
No, I'm just, I'm very grateful there was anybody in chat,
Yeah.
and just grateful you asked me on.
Yeah. Thank you. Come
You're,
back.
you're an awesome host, David.
I really appreciate that. Hey, man, that means a lot to me. Thank you.
No,
I
you're fun
appreciate it.
It's a lot of fun. Certain people have a way of getting information out of other certain people, and you're good.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
You're good
yeah.
at it.
Yeah. I appreciate it. And a lot of time, I find like some of the stuff we discussed tonight, I find that to be just so important. I mean,
Yeah.
things you don't learn on other podcasts
Yeah.
or in some cases you haven't said.
Oh, I definitely told some first on your show.
Yeah. Well,
no
I'm
doubt.
glad. All right. Well,
I'll probably
listen,
regret doing so, but
well, because I think you're cool. If you watch it back and you don't like it, I'll put it on private.
no, it's all good.
I
It's
don't
all
want to
good.
do that because it was
It's all good.
really incredible. Come back soon, Doug. Thank
Yep.
you. Thank you everybody for watching, and we'll catch you next time on David Devine Broadcasting.